He-Man's back with a new look and a new sword. Here's your look at the new Mattel Master Universe Origins, the 2000X series He-Man. On his 16th birthday, Prince Adam accepted the mantle of He-Man, drawing on the power of King Grayskull. Even though this He-Man came from a later released animated series, not the one created by Filmation, he still, though, uses the same body as the other Master Universe Origins figures. And to be honest, I'm not really sure I know how I feel about that. I'm going to get more into that in a moment. First, though, let's grab the tape measure just to see how tall the He-Man figure stands. And because, of course, he is using the same body, means he'll also be the same height. Is that how it works? Not all the time. Could be a different head sculpt. But in this case, though, the figure stands about 5.5 inches in height, or he's going to be about 13.5 centimeters tall. Going ahead and bringing in a couple of He-Man figures now. Here's what he looks like next to the version 2, original Master Universe Origins He-Man. I'm now sticking, I think, the idea of displaying all my He-Man figures with the classic head sculpts. I know at one point I was advocating the longer hair and wishing that Mattel would have just stuck with that. But I think now I've completely just went full circle, or I guess wouldn't be necessarily a full circle, but I've come around to the idea of actually displaying all my He-Man figures with the classic head sculpts because, again, it looks like the original vintage toy. That was really long-winded. Not so long-winded, though, as here's what he also looks like next to the Battle Armor He-Man. Now, one change I did actually make, though, is I used the head sculpt that came included with that 2-pack of Battle Damage Battle Cat and the Chrome Finished Armor He-Man. I just used the head sculpt for this Battle Armor He-Man. Gotta still think that they gotta fix this figure down the road with not as wide shoulders. So really not looking at this one and just strictly looking at these two. They are using the same torso, they are using the same arms, they are using the same legs. What is different, though, is the underoos, the loincloth, the armor that he's wearing, and of course, a brand new head sculpt. Not only does the 2000X series He-Man come included with a brand new head, but it also comes included with brand new accessories, more fitting of the 2000X series. Starting first, the figure comes included with a battle shield. The shield is much more elaborate than the one we got before. It's one of the original He-Man shields. Not really sure which one this came included with, but it's also got a slightly more bluish tint to it. It still has more of the familiar kind of warmer orange in the middle, but you can see, like, the way they've sculpted the shield is definitely a lot more elaborate than what we got with the more simpler looking shield. They attach the same way on both the forearms, so you have yourself like a little clip that attaches onto the hands, and then these little clips right here clip onto the forearm. Let me go ahead and demonstrate that for you right now. I know all you guys by now already know how these attach. Just clip the hand onto the shield, and then that just clips onto the forearm like that. And he's got the shield there on his side. There's no real place to put the shield other than just putting it onto He-Man's forearm. I guess you could kind of have it just draping. I mean, you could kind of clip it around. I had done this at one point, clipped it around sort of the armor that he has, but I mean, I'm just going to display it on the side anyways. What's the point? The figure also comes included with a battle axe. And here's what the battle axe looks like that we get with this figure. And a much smaller version of battle axe. This would have been coming included with the original Master Universe Origins He-Man. Not only is the handle a lot longer, but again, like much more the elaborate looking sculpting. Kind of looks again like a little bit like a bat almost. Very cool looking axe. Quite large as well. I mean, just to look at it versus He-Man, it's the whole length of his forearm. One a little bit more closer in scale and color. Well, not closer in scale, but closer in color. Here's another one of the battle armor. Again, I don't know which battle axe this came included with, but a little bit more closer in color. For the award of the best sculpted one, it would definitely have to go with the 2000X series of He-Man. And this, of course, clips into his hand. It clips pretty good. I thought the handle may have been too narrow, but it fits in his hand decently enough. And because, of course, he does have a little holster here in the back, you can also decide to holster the battle axe on the back of his torso instead. Now, obviously, the thing that I'm sure you guys will be the most interested to see is how his power sword looks like. One of the things I really didn't like, actually, about the 2000X series was the way that the power sword was designed. This whole bottom section around the guard, almost close to the hilt, would actually rotate as he was summoning the powers of Grayskull. I thought it was a little too excessive necessarily. I like the more simpler look of the power sword. Here's, for example, the one that comes included with the regular He-Man. Double-sized sword, by the way. I didn't bring out the half sword for no reason. I mean, I always prefer to display my He-Man with the double-sided sword myself. But you can see really a very vast difference between the two. Now, to base it on the original Mattel line, this, I think, would have also been painted in an orange. They have pretty much just left it to only just the molding of the silver plastic. It's a decent sword, but again, I don't ever really like the 2000X series sword. It was overly complicated for no reason whatsoever. Definitely went for a more techno look. Very more armory looking sword. But anyways, it does display into his hand. You would like to think it would at least display in his hand. And it just clips just into his hand, just next to his thumb. And you can have He-Man displayed with the power sword. Unfortunately, though, if you go ahead and take the power sword and you try to wedge it into the back here, it only goes so far. First of all, the width of the blade is going to get in the way of things. And then, of course, you've got all the additional texturing, these little rivet points, for example. If you try to force it down any bit past that point, I think you're probably going to rip this plastic. But that's as far down as it would go. Some would say that that's far enough. I almost would have liked if it could have gone a little bit lower, and one better. I also wish that this loop could have been more on an angle. So instead of the sword literally just going down just behind his back like this, if they had looped it in such a way where you could actually have had the sword this way instead. Not this way, this way. But of course that would involve this having to be twisted. I don't know why they didn't twist it, though. I think even in the original one, he actually carried the sword more like this and not straight down. Anyways, those are the accessories that come included with He-Man. Getting, though, a closer look at the 2000X series, overall, I do like the figure. My big thing, the one critique I would have, and some would even say it's not even a valid critique either, is the fact that this figure never existed, in the sense that when Mattel came back around and decided to relaunch the Master Universe line, these figures didn't look like this. They would have been much larger, a little bit off-proportioned, more staction as well. They didn't have really as much of the articulation, but he never really looked necessarily like this in this kind of classic body. The hard part, though, is now accepting this line. I don't even necessarily have to have picked up the figure. Obviously, I'm a big Master Universe fan, at least collecting the toy line, so I would have wanted to pick this up anyways, but it seems almost a little out of place to get a 2000X series He-Man with not that traditional mold, to get it like this. I mean, again, just to move this one over and bring in the other He-Man, to his credit, would have looked like the original vintage toy. This doesn't look like the vintage toy, so it's off. It's a little jarring for me, at least, to be looking at He-Man like this and just know that this is the 2000X series He-Man. I mean, the head sculpts, while being very close to one another, there's some definitely different changes that they have made. Primarily, it's more in his hair. You could almost even throw this in, almost displayed on your shelf like the Master Universe movie, for example, He-Man, and not necessarily even attach it to the 2000X series at all. I might even just consider to do that. I mean, like, the armor is very close to what we would have got from the movie He-Man. The way they've sort of designed the front armor, you've got some good gold added in there, some additional red that's added for the symbol here in the front. I always thought the symbol looked like Hercules. If anybody remembers the original, the Mighty Hercules cartoon. Remember with Daedalus? Anybody remember that? No, I'm the only one. Of course, I'm the only one. But it does kind of remind me like the Mighty Hercules logo, the way they've done the red there. It's very different, very much different from the type of armor that he would have had on his torso here. Relying, again, more on browns and less on the grays and the blues that we've got here. The loincloth is also a little bit different as well, whereas the belt on the original He-Man would have just been the orange belt and then the fur of the loincloth below that. This He-Man definitely goes for a more elaborate looking armor. It looks good on the figure, but again, it's so out of place for me to have this on display and be looking at this like the 2000 series He-Man. Boots are also a little bit different of a color. They kind of keep the consistent color of this dark blue. What's rather weird on this He-Man too is the fact that he's got a pocket on the back. What is he exactly storing in a pocket where he has to be sitting down in a vehicle? Keys, probably not really a key place. That's not a good key place to be storing stuff. Imagine putting your keys in that and then sitting down. Ooh, can't imagine how painful that would be. It's just so out of place, the fact he's got a loincloth with a pocket on the back. Why would they have even sculpted that in the first place? I got to think that the original He-Man would have had that, but it just seems of all the places I could put a pocket, anywhere I would be sitting down and storing anything inside of that, I would just think that would be such a bad idea, and yet it's there. Coloring, again, is good. I mean, you got some additional silver added there for his gauntlets. The same silver is also matched here to the front, and you've got also the same silver that outlines the Mighty Hercules logo on the front. If you were to remove this armor, basically you just detach it, what you would just see underneath is just a regular He-Man body. And just like I said, you just attach that back into place. I don't really tend to like to take the armor off because they never go back on the right way again. get that all the way on there. For the articulation here on 2000X series He-Man, his head rotates the exact same way as the other He-Man we looked at before. It's on a ball joint. The head looks down, the head looks up, and also rocks back and forth as well. Somebody right now, this whole time during the course of this review, has said you left something off. I did. You can get to that more in a second. Arms rotate all the way around. They're also on ball joints, so they hinge outward. I don't know why on my He-Man either, just to flip this guy around, he's got like smudges. A smudge there on the shoulder, and like a smudge on the back, the triceps section of his arm. I don't know why. Where'd that come from? Who knows? Has a swivel, though, in his hands and his elbows, I should say. It also allows the elbow to bend back and forth. The hands rotate also all the way around. Standard swivel only on the waist. Legs do split out. There's on a ball joint after all. The legs can move forward and back. Single hinge on the knee. That also allows the lower leg to rotate. The boot also independently rotates. And the feet also move up and down in ankle pivot. We're not reinventing anything from the design here, at least body-wise, for the 2000X series He-Man. Yes, there is one other thing. Virginia, there's a Santa Claus. There's one other thing I did actually forget, and that is the included mini-comic. Normally, I would have just had the mini-comic out with the rest of the accessories, but I did put the mini-comic over to the side because I did want to kind of spread everything out. And while spreading it out, I actually did forget to bring in the comic. So the comic is right there. Of course, inside as well, you got yourself a little pamphlet just to tell you what parts are removable. Shoulders can be yanked off. Head can be decapitated. Lower boots can also be removed. And the whole entire waist can be just pulled right off and swapped around with another figure, if somebody does decide to do that. And of course, the one last thing we'll also look at is the mini comic. Normally would have been the first thing we would have started things, but because I had the comic over there, so how many of you were actually saying, dude's totally forgetting about the mini comic? I didn't forget about the mini comics right here. This mini comic, by the way, is entitled The Horrors of Pighead. Pighead is one of the advertised characters on the cross promo on the back of the packaging. Also the same thing that's also advertised on the back of the card here as well, the back of the comic. Quickly looking through this, I did order this online, so thank goodness for that. I actually do have actual text where I'd be able to read this. Once again, the illustrations do not disappoint. You got the 2000X series Skeletor, which kind of excited to get that one. I know it's sort of following the same pattern where, so like, why wouldn't you just be disappointed to get the Skeletor? I like the look of the Skeletor. He-Man, maybe not as much. And then, of course, we've also got over here Mantenna, a figure we will be looking at in an upcoming review. For many people collecting the He-Man casually, this wave was more so for Mantenna. Not necessarily for He-Man, not for Skeletor. And if you're really not that interested in Pighead, you're probably not going to be picking up that figure either. But good-looking artwork. There's Pighead there also on the back, showcased. And, of course, the back of the comic. Nice-looking comic. This also is going to be also available with all the other three figures that we will be looking at in the upcoming reviews. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's a hard thing to say because I think I have too much invested interest in this where I'm kind of coming up with, I don't know, like a biased opinion solely based on the way that the original toy line was. I'm having a struggle looking at this and not saying, okay, well, 2000X series He-Man was not released looking like this. So because of that, I'm almost even more removed from the idea of wanting to collect them, at least in this scale. Also, the same thing would have been in the case with, like, the New Adventures of He-Man. New Adventures of He-Man would have had completely redesigned bodies. They would have not looked like this. Maybe, you never know, when we eventually have a look at the New Adventures He-Man stuff here on this channel, when those figures are circulating, I might probably just find myself saying the same thing too. Good-looking figures, but I'm having a harder time attaching them just simply because they were never part or never really around the original vintage toy line. If you are one that believes that no accessory should be left behind, technically you could attach all of the accessories to He-Man's body. Power sword in his hand. Then take the shield and start with the loop that we looked at in the review, and then while the loop is sort of laying on top of the loop for the back of his torso, slide down the battle axe, and it'll keep the shield in place. The shield, though, awkwardly sits a little too low on He-Man's body, but again, all the accessories are at least along with the figure for the ride. The figure itself still looks good. I mean, whatever qualms I may have with the idea that this is actually being incorporated into the Master Universe Origins, I look at more of the Origins line and maybe it's just somebody that's set in his ways. I look at the Origins line and I think to myself that this is the vintage line with just better articulation. That when you then start bringing in other characters that didn't inhabit the world of those vintage toys, it seems a little out of place to me. And while this is a good-looking He-Man, I don't know if I have as much the interest in getting this He-Man as I would have wanted to get just a regular He-Man that would have existed from the original toy line. If I had like the two in front of me, I would probably be more interested to get a He-Man that would have existed from the 80s with better articulation before I would have got the 2000X series. That being said, though, I'm sure probably going to sound like a hypocrite for saying this. I think I like the Skeletor, though, a little bit more than He-Man. For a stand-in, though, this sort of also works as a Dolph Lundgren He-Man. I think we are getting a Dolph Lundgren He-Man in a larger scale. I don't know if they've confirmed anything yet for the smaller Origins line. If you don't really like the idea of displaying him as 2000X series He-Man, he could substitute, I suppose, somewhat to a Dolph Lundgren movie Master Universe He-Man instead. Nice looking figure, but I think I don't like the figure for all the wrong reasons. And I'm sure I'm going to hear it down below in the comments section. But what do you guys think of this? Do you think, first of all, the Master Universe Origins should be exclusive to figures that would have existed in the 80s, just redone with better articulation? Or do you think, like most people, I'm sure, that it's an opportunity for Mattel to incorporate any Master Universe character, whether it be in the original Filmation line, whether it would have been in the 2000X series, whether it been in the movie line, or anything even past that point? Do you feel like that anything is fair game when it comes to getting these figures released as a Master Universe Origins? Maybe I'll put it as a debate down below in the comments section. And as well, if you guys are interested and would like to get He-Man for yourself from the 2000X series, I actually grabbed this one over on Entertainment Earth. I'll provide the link down below in the video description if you guys are interested to grab one for yourself. And like I said, we are going to be looking at Skeletor, Mantenna, which I know most people are probably the most excited to see, and we are also going to be looking at Pighead. I like the look of Pighead myself. I might even say I like Pighead more than I like the He-Man. Is that strange to say? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Anyways, guys, there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way if you also have a little bit of time on your hands, and maybe you just want to sit on this channel for a little while. Popping up at the very end of this video as well, a shameless plug, there will be a playlist of all the other Master Universe Origins figures I've had a look at. One's based on the original toy line, and one's like 2000X series He-Man that never existed in this body proportion and mold, but still nonetheless ones that we are getting from Mattel anyways. Lots of videos coming your way, guys. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.